Welcome to ZKast, everyone. I'm ZKast from ZK Research, and I'm here for another one of my thought leadership series. I'm joined today by Allwyn Sequeira. You are the founder and CEO of Highway 9 Networks. Congratulations, Allwyn. I understand we just saw the company get launched, so that's fantastic. Before we get going, though, and talk about Highway 9, a little bit of a bio on yourself.
Thanks, yes, good to be here. And yes, we're very excited about the launch and the overwhelming response. About myself, I've been in the Valley a long time, did networking in the early days, CSNet, NSFNet, first HP products, launched and took a company public in the 90s, a voice video data company. Likewise, then became the first to create a virtualized security company that got incorporated and bought by VMware. At VMware, we had a really good run over the last decade or so. We created network and security virtualization, a product called NSX that went on to be more than $2 billion. And that in turn led to software-defined data centers, which led to private clouds. I ran VMware's private cloud there for a while, reporting to Pat Gelsinger, our CEO. And then that led to hybrid clouds as we got out of the owning our own metal. And we created these hybrid clouds that had VMware private clouds interface seamlessly with Google and Amazon, et cetera. And then the last thing I did before leaving VMware, we created a telco cloud platform that folks like Dish and Vodafone began to use very successfully. So really good stint there. And that's when, after about a decade plus at VMware, we hit COVID, and during COVID, we decided to reinvent ourselves like everyone else in the industry was. And that's when we happened to come up with the notion and idea for Highway 9 Networks.
Yeah, so it's fair to say you've been a real pioneer in a bunch of different areas in networking, and it looks like you're trying to do something again, pioneer a new industry, or at least a new take on an existing industry. And I've noticed that what your company offers is something called a mobile cloud for enterprises. So can you explain what that is?
Correct. No, this is a very important realization. Over the last decade, as you know, we helped most of our enterprise customers move workloads and servers and apps to the public cloud. And that changed everything. The discussion changed from what it is and where it is to no one caring about where it is, as much as these servers and apps in the public cloud provided all the needful for enterprises, making it so much simpler for enterprises to consume and serve up apps. At that point, when we began to talk to customers, we began to realize this trend happening in enterprises, more and more mobile devices being used. In fact, one of our biggest customers there, MIT, began to tell us that 97% of their users were going mobile, using mobile devices. Likewise, we began to see the rise of more and more mobile IoT devices. Likewise, as the world started moving to AI, there's more and more infusion of back office, logistics, and all that mobile devices. So there's a big missing element as to how to bring together all these mobile devices in the enterprise locally, because obviously this is not something that you can run in the cloud. And there was no mobile first approach towards networking, towards clouds in the enterprise. And given our background of building clouds to abstract and make simple the solutions for these problems, we said, why not focus on building a mobile cloud for the enterprise, meaning it's deployed out there in the enterprises, and it becomes the collecting point for all of your mobile devices. Start with a clean room approach. For a second, assume you don't have fixed ports, you don't have fixed wireless, you have these mobile devices which can get embarked on a mobile cloud, whether they are in building, in the room, uncarpeted areas, in the garage, in the foyer, across campus, or in fact, across the nation. So that was a notion. Let's untether ourselves from the physical presence to being joinable on the public cloud. So much like we did with public clouds, the where does not matter. Similarly, with the private mobile clouds, the where does not matter. Where you're sitting does not matter, whether you're in your office or somewhere else, if you will. And that is a basic notion for mobile cloud.
I'd actually like to know who the 3% of people at MIT are that aren't mobile first. That's the more interesting question here.
They probably got forgotten during COVID, but
Yeah,
maybe in some
maybe.
back office somewhere.
Now, a lot of the terms you used, right? Cloud networking has been around now for a while. Private mobile networks have been something that's been on the horizon for a while. Still
Correct.
hasn't a lot of deployments, but this seems to be a new approach to private mobile networking,
Correct.
really cloud native. So can you
Correct.
tell me what's changed today that's driving the need to do it differently?
Correct. If you look at what technologies were in place, there are two technologies that are conflated here. One is private LTE and one is private mobile networks. Private LTE was more taking what used to be the purview of the big operators like AT&T and Verizon, using Ericsson and Nokia, and that devices and coming all the way in and extending that capability for enterprises. So places like oil and gas and all that and mining began to use that technology. But there was no intersection, no integration with IT, enterprise IT, if you will. Likewise, public mobile networks got associated with the CBRS, private 5G, and building out the network itself. But that is just a necessity. It's not sufficient. So the way I look at it, we're not changing or replacing private mobile networks. In fact, we think the technology, cellular technology, is the superior technology to realize the goals of building a public cloud. Why? Because you have superior range. It's not just within an office. It's got wider range. It's lot secure all the way from SIM authentication at the endpoints, encryption all the way through. It's got better performance, lower latency, higher throughput, more concurrency. And most importantly, it's mobile. It allows for mobility, right? By definition, versus the fixed wireless cases. So as you go from your office, walking across a building, etc., you need mobility in space. So private cellular is the right starting point. But there are so many things missing from a private mobile network that are absolutely essential for you to truly be successful in being useful to an enterprise. For example, you need for it to be a full stack of all the capabilities, managing the SIMs, managing the spectrum, managing the front haul, the back haul, managing the packet cores, distributing the packet cores, etc., etc. All of that has to be made available. Again, it's all got to be made available in a cloud native fashion. So it's an easy button, much like Meraki did for Wi-Fi or Juniper Mist does more recently. That kind of a simplified approach. But more importantly than all of that, the single biggest thing that's missing in the current solutions is they're not well integrated with the enterprise. They tend to be ships by night, meaning that if you're going to bring in the solution into an enterprise, the mobile cloud must fit in very nicely. It has to be an extension of your current network, things like DDI, your DNS and DHCP and IPAM and your networking and your segmentation. Also participating in all IT best practices, whether it's firewall, NAC, MDM, all of those things are an absolute imperative. In fact, till we had all of those features up and running, we were not going to be useful or easily deployable in an enterprise. We had to achieve all of that. We had to make sure that the networks were PTP, precision timing, ready, and things like that. That's one side. And the other side that's very critical is making sure the product in the mobile cloud also interfaces seamlessly with the AT&Ts and Verizons and T-Mobile of the world. So mobile cloud, easy to onboard all the applications through a cloud native easy button, tightly integrated into the enterprise and seamlessly interworking with the major providers was a necessity. Not to mention the other side of the coin, in addition to the mobile users, we had big customers, top auto manufacturing players that had all these new AI devices, whether they be robots, whether they be auto-guided vehicles, torques, wrenches, logistics situation. All of these devices are all appearing out there. All of them have to be very seamlessly integrated via the above principles into the network. And that's what we said is the necessity for mobile cloud for the enterprise.
All right. So when I think of the landscape of 5G or cellular, right? And there's been lots of terms used. There's to describe what you're doing. But there's a set of legacy vendors. You mentioned a couple of them, Ericsson and Nokia, and but those are like carrier grade infrastructure that's not really practical enterprise to deploy. But there's also a few startups that tout private mobile networking, but really most are kind of a lift and shift of existing telco cellular technology that's been form fitted to fit in the enterprise.
Correct.
But from what I've read about what Highway 9 does is your mobile cloud is built as an open and cloud native platform with an integrated stack of mobile services such as the SIM, Spectrum, Lifecycle Management, et cetera. And so why do you think that's important to customers?
Correct. One of the things we realized when going through this at VMware, we created the notion of a private cloud built on the heels of the software-defined data center. And we realized we can never do it all ourselves. The most important thing is build a distributed platform where you have centralized cloud-based management and orchestration, but a distributed edge because it has to enable local traffic staying local. As for example, many of the new mobile use cases, you're controlling sensors or devices via a mobile phone, but all that data has got to be kept local. So you need a system that is distributed with local breakout. And so what we landed up doing is build a software-defined distributed software system with a cloud control edge. And at the edge, we can integrate all the best-in-class services. Like we mentioned earlier, one of the beauties of our platform deriving from our experience at VMware, we have this mobile cloud that has an edge where you can bring in the firewalls, you can bring in the MDMs, you can bring in the NAC, you can bring in the Zscalers and Palo Altos on the network seamlessly. So it has to be an open platform from that standpoint. Likewise, it has to be an open platform in terms of embracing all of the new cellular attached systems, whether they're radios, whether they're gateways. You'll have a gateway with Wi-Fi downstream, but cellular upstream. You might have IoT devices that are aggregated into a gateway that upstreams into a cellular. So we made sure that we have built a platform that embraces all of the innovation so that you can have the best-in-class radios, gateways, cellular devices, and all that into our software distributed system, and they can get integrated at the edge or in the cloud. In the cloud, for example, it's very important to have a platform. There's so much innovation going on with respect to microservices and the cloud, likewise AI services. So we built a platform to make it very easy for AI innovation in the platform itself and in the ecosystem, if you will.
All right. Well, and I think a good way to think about it is just it's simply the evolution and the infusion of cloud into enterprise networks. Historically, when you think of the traditional cloud networking platforms, they were, as I said, a lift and shift, right, where you're actually bringing cloud native principles
correct
to this industry. Yeah. Now, I noticed also two of your big use cases are using private mobile networks for everywhere voice and data coverage. So across the network, and then always on mobile data access. But both of these, which are based primarily on privately deployed 4G, 5G, have been hyped for a while, but really lacks deployments. And I think when I talk to enterprise network managers, that's because the complexity, they don't really have a lot of telecom experience in most enterprises. And then there's cost. And so how does your mobile cloud actually simplifies those things? So allowing companies to deploy it, but not be so overwhelmed with cost and then a lack of skill.
Yeah, I think the demand has been there, like you mentioned. These are two very simple use cases. What folks in every enterprise want is coverage across all three major MNOs, whether it's VMware, whether it's Verizon or AT&T or T-Mobile, because you have visitors, you have guests. Even if your company focuses on one of the three, you need all of the three providers, and you need it everywhere across campus. And like you said, I think the missing link has been the incompleteness of the solution. It's got to be easily deployable. It's got to be controlled by IT, so it fits into IT practices. And many of the earlier solutions were pretty much taking and extending the signal from the macro towers into in-building, a system called DAS, distributed antennas, systems, and things like that to extend the network. And secondly, many of the initial cores, packet cores, which are critical to the control plane and signaling, many of these packet cores were born in the telco space, where you pretty much have to have these mainframes distributing traffic across the entire country. Here we have the opposite problem: distribute the core so that you can keep the local traffic local. So there are 3 or 4 very foundational things that made it impossible for folks to deploy in the enterprise. And the other point that you brought up is very key. People in enterprises will not have the wherewithal to become 3GPP experts, which is the underlying technology for 5G. As you can imagine, in a telco and an AT&T, you might have legions of developers doing packet core, doing radio assembly, doing orchestration, doing management. All of that has to be brought together. And it's a fairly sophisticated technology. So simplify it. Don't have enterprises have to deal with 5G lingo or anything like that. Simplify it, make it an easy button deployment via a cloud native model. That was the trick. And that's where we've seen initial customers eat it up,
Yeah, on the topic of customers, Allwyn, I'm curious as to where you're seeing the demand for private mobile networks and mobile clouds, and specifically, I think where we've seen early adopter, you mentioned oil and gas and things like that. Are you seeing any new use cases?
Yes. Yeah. So the 3 places where we've seen the most initial interaction and absorption, firstly, large scale manufacturing. Most of manufacturing today has an assembly of robots and AGVs, and these are all mobile devices, fixed wireless technology, just to not cut it. So they absolutely need this private cellular technology, and especially where you have larger fields. There are some manufacturing facilities that we've seen that are like 20 football fields, 50 football fields big. So you not only need the cellular technology, but you need it operating at scale with orchestration, with seamless interfacing, so that when things go wrong, it's easily, meantime to repair and all gets handled. So that's manufacturing. Higher education, we've seen now there's a bunch, you'll be amazed with the kind of higher ed universities we are highly engaged with, starting with MIT. MIT was our first major customer. They've got multiple buildings. I have another discussion with MIT's CIO, Mark Silas, alongside here. But we talked through some of the key use cases. Mark was the first one to recognize most of his users have gone mobile. He's got classrooms that still want people using their Zoom on their laptops attached wirelessly. It begs the question of what do you do with physical ports? So this kind of a notion, they were the first to take advantage of it. And that message is spreading across higher education universities, where we are finding simple use cases like sometimes Wi-Fi when it's hitting its peak just doesn't work. It is not deliberate. It's not a predictable medium, if you will. So use cases like that. You also sometimes game day in some of the big athletics departments, Wi-Fi gets crowded, DAS gets crowded. You want your essential services, priority use cases to work, sometimes ticketing and sales and things like that. So many use cases in higher ed. The third area we've seen is commercial real estate. These new buildings, recently, the only way to bring in signal and coverage into the building was through DAS, the distributed antenna systems. These are no longer being subsidized by the major telcos. So that leaves a gap that needs to be filled. And something like this, the private mobile clouds inside the enterprise, inside the buildings, is beginning to take hold. Likewise, there are other cases, but these are the first 3 we start with. Healthcare is right there on the docket, but everything in healthcare takes a little longer. So we haven't come out to the other side of it, but I'll tell you, there's lots of engagements on the front end. And then other places like operations centers, warehouses, and those are the places where you not only need the mobile cloud, but you need a mobile cloud that is controlled and managed by IT, if you will.
It seems that the commonality there is mission critical wireless, but not at the expense of management and overhead that's so complicated that the ROI just goes out the window.
No, that's a great way of summarizing it, Zeus. Mission critical, albeit at the fingertips of an IT operator.
Yeah. So I was looking at your website. I noticed that you've got a pretty extensive architecture for your mobile cloud platform. Can you just talk about the core components of that?
Yeah, so like we said earlier, for us, it needed to be a full ready to deploy system. So it starts with the private mobile network at the bottom layer. That means all of the radios, 5G, 4G radios that are necessary in today's thing, including the CPs. We don't build all of these ourselves, but what we've done is build a platform to pre-test and validate. So by the time you go to an enterprise, you come in with a pre-validated set of such devices. So that's the ground floor tier. The second tier is our edge, and this edge needs to be implemented and deployed in a distributed fashion across multiple sites, multiple venues across the country. So think thousands of sites that need to be controlled from the center. So we have these sites where we call it the mobile edge. And the mobile edge is where we deploy our packet cores. And the packet cores are a very foundational part of 5G, where you keep, do all the traffic manipulation. You're able to do separation of the control plane from the data plane. So these packet cores are the essential systems that sit at the edge. Likewise, there are gateways into the operators like AT&T and Verizon and T-Mobile and things like that. And as I mentioned earlier, the integration on-prem with the IT departments, with the best practice. So the edge is a foundational piece. So the lowermost tier was the private mobile network. The second tier is the middle, is our mobile edge. And finally, we put it all together with our mobile services, or mobile cloud services. And this comprises our mobile cloud stack. And the mobile services upstairs, these are a set of microservices that do all the things necessary to do the lifecycle management of SIM or spectrum or front haul networks or the packet cores or the radios or things like that, plus new advances like AI operations and security. And now we use AI, for example, to run and configure our radios in the system and all. So that's all built into our cloud services layer. And this is a layer that's multi-tenant so that we can have our customers, our partners manage multiple entities through that one interface. So there you have it, a mobile cloud comprised of the private mobile network, then the edge, mobile edge, and the mobile cloud services. And that all together comprise the mobile stack, and it's deployable. People buy some radios, and the rest of the stack comes up fairly quickly within a matter of hours and days versus, years.
Years, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for overviewing that. I have one more question. So you launched the company, it's ready to go. What's next?
I think the next we now the thing that's made us successful over the last decade is going deep and ensuring scale with a few select customers. With this launch, we now welcome enterprises, welcome partners where these things resonate with you. If you are looking for an easy button deployment via a cloud model and these use cases like an always on mobile data network or an everywhere coverage, or if you're an an enterprise that is heading towards using AI in a very intrinsic fashion, all of these three worlds is what we are targeting initially. Give us a call and we will work with you on the journey. So from the next few months is nothing more than taking what we have that works very well in a few selected early customers that we wanted to make sure these things work. But we're now ready for prime time. Come give us a call. We'll get engaged with projects with you. And if you're a partner, we'll engage you and your customers into our equation. But we think we're ready to roll and make 2024 the year of the mobile cloud for the enterprise, for the AI enterprise.
Well, best of luck to you, because this has been a long time coming, right? The promise of private mobile has been around for a long time. There's been a number of issues that have held it up, but it's been cost and complexity of the big two, and it looks like you're trying to address those things.
Very much so. And Zeus, thanks so much for recognizing and having been in the industry. It's so much fun to work with folks that know and understand the complexity, even as they understand the opportunity. So
yeah, well, many, many years as a network engineer. So if people want to learn more about Highway 9 Networks, the website is?
Highway9.com.
With 9 as a digit.
Yeah, 9 of the digit.
Okay, so I'll include that. I'll include that
Highway9.com.
URL in the YouTube description below. So, anyways, Allwyn, thanks for joining me on behalf of the founder and CEO of Highway 9 Networks, Allwyn Sequeira. I'm ZKast, and thanks for watching. Please hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time on my next episode of ZKast.